Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studio, this is Talking Politics, and I am New Jersey's premier journalist and top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit online magazine, Fernando Uribe. Hope you're all doing well, and certainly in advance, I want to wish all the dads out there a very happy Father's Day, as it is a special time of year. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. And ladies and gentlemen, I've talked about it before on this program, and you know what? I'm just fired up about it again. But it seems that today's woke culture continues to be a joke. And let me just sort of preface it by saying that whether it's up here in Hudson County, whether it's even across New Jersey, wokeness really has no limitations. It's everywhere. And quite frankly, here's one that should really sort of maybe not bother everybody, but it's a reminder of the absurdity of today's woke culture. So let me take you out to Morris County in a township of Randolph. And apparently there is controversy now in this school district. So last week, the Randolph Township Board of Education unanimously voted to remove the names of all holidays from their school calendar and simply call them, quote, days off. Now, folks, this was reported on various news outlets throughout New Jersey and in the tri-state area. And it's something that, again, is getting some attention. Now, some people are upset that the public in Randolph had no say in the decision. So more than 1,000 people have taken to change.org, an online petition site, in terms of addressing a petition to the board members there in the Randolph School District and also for the superintendent in that district to resign also. Now, let me just preface it by saying that, folks, this is also a school district that last year decided to rename Columbus Day because of their sort of insistence on making sure that the township of Randolph is more inclusive and accepting to all. Now, we also saw this practice take place in Parsippany. We even saw here in Hudson County where one of the local activist organizations was demanding that the statue of Christopher Columbus be taken down, which is still near Journal Square. Now, let me just preface this by saying, ladies and gentlemen, that I find it really funny that grown men and women are still being triggered by statues some 500 years later after the existence of the person that they're being triggered about. So, you know what? It is June, and even though I don't go back to work until September, I feel the need to perhaps, hold a history class today. As you all know, I'm an educator by day, and one of the things that I specialize in teaching is U.S. history and also world history. So let me just take a break from my journalistic duties and let me just have class today. Folks, do you think that back in the day, and we're talking about hundreds if not thousands of years ago, and let's forget about the Americas, let's go to Northern Europe. Do you think the Vikings that were occupying territories in Northern Europe sat around with other tribes and sat around a dinner table and discussed how to appropriate land? No. They were going out and slaughtering people. Now, let me preface this by saying that I'm not even trying to allege that the practice is correct. Of course not. It's horrible. It's reprehensible, but it happened, folks. It's part of history. It's part of humanity. That's what humans have done since the beginning of time. Do you think tribes in Africa sat around a table, around, a campfire, talking about how to appropriate land in the nearby territories? Of course not. What they were doing was slaughtering each other because that's what humans do. That's what they were doing for hundreds, if not thousands of years here on Earth. So let's move across the Atlantic into the Americas, whether it be at the tip of Canada all the way down to what we know today as Argentina. And obviously we know that indigenous tribes occupied the Americas. And do you think that long before Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, do you think that indigenous people in the Americas were, having discussions with nearby tribes on how to appropriate land once again? Of course not. They were slaughtering each other. That's what you do. When you occupy, you tend to sort of take over land and get rid of the occupants or the residents that are there. That happened, folks. Okay? It's happened again across the continent of Europe and Asia and Africa, and it happened here in the Americas. So why we're still having a tantrum about this 500 years later, whether it was Christopher Columbus or it could have been other settlers who marched, who sailed across the Atlantic Ocean and landed here in the Americas and did exactly the same thing that Columbus did, and of course, any predecessors or any successors. But it just seems to me that now, with everything going on and what's wrong in New Jersey, this is what many liberals and progressives, and again, as always, the social justice clowns, the compassion mongers, and the woke fools seem to be fixating on. Yes, you know what? Let's replace Columbus Day and let's make it Indigenous Peoples Day, because we have to make sure that we don't honor someone like Christopher Columbus. But you know what's funny, though, ladies and gentlemen? These are probably the same people that ethnically, right, either when you look at their roots or anything, probably have some ancestors that probably engage in the very same practices. Case in point, listen, my mom is Cuban and also Spaniard, and my dad's Colombian. Do you think that, and by the way, it's June, so if you're a soccer fan like me, you're probably watching the Euro Cup or you're watching the Copa America. But more specifically, when it comes to the Euro Cup, I'm rooting for Spain. It's part of my heritage. It's part of my lineage. It's where my grandfather was born. It's where I still have dozens of cousins still living in various parts of the country. Am I still going to be bitching and moaning about what Spain did to the Americas 5, 6, 7, 800 years ago? The way that the Spaniards came into Colombia, my dad's homeland, and ravaged the country for decades? Of course not. You know what? At the end of the day, yes, it's part of human history. It happened. But I'm not going to be bitching and moaning and denouncing Spain still hundreds of years later. It's absurd. Okay? Are we going to start still having meltdowns about people like Christopher Columbus or others? I mean, folks, this is the stuff that woke culture is fixated on. And I don't know about you, but I'm tired of it. And I understand that parents in the Randolph School District, I know as well as in Parsippany and in other parts of the state, they've been very upset with the local school boards because they feel that, hey, by sort of trying to cleanse everything and whitewashing history or rewriting history to make sure that we don't offend anybody, that's the most important thing. Folks, have we just lost a spine? Have we lost our reproductive organs out there where, I don't know, we just tend to be triggered by everything now? And for whatever reason, we have to make sure we don't offend people, and we have to make sure that we either get rid of statues. You know what? It's funny to me that people are triggered by statues, like Christopher Columbus. But, Newark Mayor Ross Baraka this week, with taxpayer dollars, decided to unveil a 700-pound statue of George Floyd. Well, I don't know about you. I mean, listen, with all due respect, I mean, it's tragic how he died, but we're also glorifying a career criminal here. So is this what we want with taxpayer dollars? But nobody has a problem with that. Nobody has a problem with putting a statue of George Floyd, in the middle of Newark, notwithstanding what a mess Newark continues to be. But that's what's on the list of priorities for Newark Mayor Ross Baraka. Wow. Folks, that's, again, just another example of how absurd woke culture is today. Whether it's being triggered by statues of people that existed hundreds and hundreds of years ago, or just, I don't know, making sure that, that everyone loves each other and that, everything's about rainbows and unicorns and that we can't offend anybody. And we have to make sure that we acquiesce to the alphabet army and that we can't, make sure that we're all inclusive and that, we're all accepting. Folks, that's garbage. That's gibberish. I don't know about you. That's not really important to me right now. You know what? In the fiscal mess that is New Jersey, and in terms of the chaos that we live in here in this state, I don't know about you, but getting triggered by statues, probably the last thing on my mind. And for a lot of woke people, unfortunately, it should be last on their minds too. But again, as we all know about woke people, yeah, their heart's in the right place, but as you always know, their head's always up their ass. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. On the latest edition of the 5-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, which you listen to live every week at 9 p.m. on Wednesday nights at www.blogtalkradio.com/talkingthehudson, was the founder and publisher of the Jersey City Times, Aaron Morrill. Now, he's been on the show before, and I always welcome his conversations because he's really getting a pulse of what's going on in Hudson County's largest city. You can always check out the great journalism that they have over at their website at www.jcitytimes.com. Now, we spoke for over an hour on a plethora of different topics, and here are some highlights for your consideration. First and foremost, we talked about the candidacy of Louis Spears, a local activist in Jersey City, who apparently has filed the necessary petitions to challenge Mayor Stephen Fulop coming up this November. Let's hear what Aaron had to say about Louis Spears and his candidacy.
A lot of news in Jersey City in recent weeks here since I last spoke with you, but it seems it's official apparently now that Mayor Stephen Fulop will not be running unopposed. It's become evident now, based on signatures collected and submitted at City Hall, that local activist Louis Spears will be joining the race to challenge Mayor Fulop. I know you've written about it on in the Jersey City Times what are you hearing from your sources about? Is this just a protest vote, protest campaign, or can Louis Spears in just a few months gather the necessary support to kind of make Mayor Fulop nervous?
Well, there are two pieces to that question. I think it is serious. I have no reason to believe that Louis is just doing this for publicity or to offer token resistance. I think he really believes that change is needed. However, as we all know, the mayor is an extremely talented, well-financed candidate, and I think that Louis has his work cut out for him. To be perfectly honest, I think his name recognition is quite low outside of the political junkies in Jersey City, and he's going to have to do something to change that. I think he's also going to have a tough wall to climb in terms of convincing people that he's got the resume to become mayor, having not run for public office before. On the positive side, he is a real force in his community in terms of mentoring young men, in particular young men of color that are, that have had a tough time in life like he had coming up. He has a great life story. So Louis is the real deal when it comes to activists. He's thoughtful. He is a serious person. I don't want to take anything away from him, but as we know, politics is to some degree a matter of name recognition and, of course, the money that's behind you. So I think it's going to be very, very tough for him to mount a serious challenge, but stranger things have happened.
Secondly, we talked about an article that was published on the Jersey City Times, and of course it was also collectively published in various news outlets around the area recently, where New Jersey was ranked as the best state to live in. Now, I don't know about you, I don't know who they polled, maybe Stevie Wonder, I don't know, but it definitely wasn't anybody that knows what a mess New Jersey is fiscally and what's going on in Trenton. But nevertheless, we talked about what that poll means, and you know what, even during these really bad times we've been suffering with COVID, maybe it can be viewed as a breath of fresh air for New Jersey residents. Let's hear what Aaron had to say about it.
Recent article here on the Jersey City Times. And folks, again, if you have not checked out the Jersey City Times, I would urge you to make the Jersey City Times a part of your daily reading. And by going to www.jcitytimes.com, you won't be disappointed. New Jersey was anointed the best state to live in, Aaron. I know Jersey City Times published a story on this. I know it's made some rounds on other news outlets. Let me say this. I had to laugh when I read this. And I'm glad that you provided a perspective in the breakdown here in terms of the way that New Jersey achieved their score on this poll or survey.
Right.
And, you talked about, New Jersey ranks 49th in affordability and 32nd on its economy. But it landed at number 1 for safety, I think at 5 for education and health, and 7 for quality of life. Aaron, I'm sorry, man, and this is where, the conservative me is going to come out. I don't know who they're polling. Stevie Wonder.
Well, listen,
I don't know who they're polling here because
this is. I know where you're going with this. I know where you're going with this. Look, the narrative right now is that these high tax northern blue coastal states, are bad places to live, and if only for the fact that they're so expensive, in terms of taxes and real estate. I take these studies with a grain of salt also. I really think it just depends on what a person is looking for in their life. I think that there's a lot of evidence that New Jersey schools are pretty good when compared to other school systems around the country, in spite of all their problems. but I put it up there as a shot in the arm for people living here. I thought it was a little bit fun. I thought it was interesting. It was funny. I hoped it would inspire some debate like it's doing with you. I don't vouch for the study. It came into my inbox today, and I thought, well, this is interesting. People in New Jersey take so many shots. Let's give everybody something to, one little study that'll make people feel good. I think that New Jersey takes so much guff from so many people, and I'm a New Yorker originally, but I'm a transplant, but I'm big. I think New Jersey is a great state, and Jersey City is a great city. And what makes it so great is its diversity. It really is one of the most incredibly diverse places in the world. People basically get along with each other, and just prove that people from all different walks of life can live together. And so I think there's some good things to be said about New Jersey and definitely Jersey City. But is it number one? Well, that it's really up to a given individual, with their specific needs at that moment in their life. If you don't have kids, well then you don't care about the schools. If you have certain tax situation. If you're a super high earner, you probably want to be in Florida because taxes are lower on higher earners. There are a lot of reasons for different types of people to want to be somewhere else. But that's my thought on it. I just thought it was interesting, and it should provoke some debate.
Once again, it was a very informative episode with Aaron Morrill, the founder and publisher of the Jersey City Times. And you can listen to it in its entirety by once again going to www.blogtalkradio.com/talkingtohudson. And these are the exclusives I'll continue to bring you every single week on Blog Talk Radio. Now, some local stories for your consideration. And let's start off in the Mile Square city of Hoboken with some really, really great news. And speaking of statues, obviously, I just mentioned it before, how people tend to get triggered by statues, or we tend to sort of glorify the wrong ones. Well, folks, it's great to hear that Frank Sinatra will be returning to his hometown on his birthday this December. He'll be leaning on a lamppost, tipping his hat, and he'll be sticking around forever. Now, a great story by Terry West from the Jersey Journal here, and she went on to report this week that Hoboken's first ever Frank Sinatra statue will be erected in his namesake park on the waterfront, offering a life-sized bronze portrayal of the very sharply dressed Hoboken native. Now, sculptor Carolyn Palmer spoke with the Jersey Journal and has told the newspaper that she is about halfway through the project, and when the city approached her about 2 years ago, even as Sinatra's daughter was an early fan of her work. Now, once again, she wanted to say, quote, "I have probably 100 photographs of him over the walls of my studio. I finally portrayed him at about an age of 45 because, you know what, I love Frank Sinatra." Now, the city is paying for the project through private donations, according to Health and Human Services Director Leo Pellegrini. It has raised close to $50,000 so far online, and the project's total cost will likely sit between $80,000 and $100,000. Now, for those of you that maybe are not aware, Frank Sinatra was born on December the 12th, 1915 in Hoboken, and lived at 415 Monroe Street until the age of 12. Now, a bronze plaque sits outside of his home, which the Hoboken Historical Museum placed in 1996, 2 years before Old Blue Eyes' death. Now, there's also a marker in Sinatra Park and in front of the museum itself, which hosts artifacts from his life and conducts Sinatra walking tours through the city. Folks, as someone who absolutely loves Frank Sinatra, grew up listening to his music because of my grandfather and my father collectively, I cannot be happier to hear the news about Old Blue Eyes being honored with a statue of his own in the Mile Square City, right in downtown, folks, in Sinatra Park. So while we're, again, as I mentioned before, while woke culture is getting triggered about statues about Christopher Columbus, or glorifying career criminals like George Floyd, it's nice to see that Old Blue Eyes will get his rightful place there in downtown. And you know what? It'll be a great statue to look at every time you go to the waterfront. Let's move to Jersey City now, where Wardy Councilman James Solomon had a kickoff rally at Hamilton Park in downtown Jersey City to announce his pursuit for another 4-year term. Now, a shout out to, once again, Aaron Morrill with the Jersey City Times for his report on this story. Now, Solomon is being opposed by Jacob Hudnut, the chief prosecutor in Jersey City. And also, Jake Hunnard is running on a ticket headed by incumbent mayor Stephen Fulop. Now, one of the things that's interesting, folks, if you watched Councilman Solomon's kickoff event on Facebook, again, it was a Facebook Live that I was able to watch last weekend. It was pretty interesting in terms of what he is putting forth as it pertains to his record. Now, this is a guy who, and let me just preface this by saying that, I like James Solomon. He's been on my podcast multiple occasions. I was one of the few media outlets back in 2017 that had him on multiple times when he was running again for the Wardy council seat, and ultimately when he defeated Rebecca Symes in the runoff. And ever since then, Councilman Solomon was more than gracious to come on the podcast on a regular basis. Now, in recent weeks, though, he has made it very clear to yours truly, he's not interested in coming on the podcast, and not surprising, even after having Jake Hunnard on my show and also on my Insider NJ podcast, Politically Direct, it seems like the councilman isn't very happy of me giving his opponent any airtime. But again, I'm very fair in wanting to have the councilman on to sort of talk about his record, because one thing is when he ran in 2017, yes, he ran as one of those progressive darlings, and we all know in downtown, Jersey City, we have all those white woke people that, and those hippies that love to move into downtown Jersey City, and that's fine. There's a demographic for that, and I know that James Solomon checks off the boxes for that voter demographic. But now he has a record, and now he has to defend that record, where he's been, I guess in his own mind, viewed as a maverick, but some people might think otherwise. And obviously that's what prompted Chief Prosecutor Jake Hunnard to join the race on Stephen Fulop's ticket. But certainly there was a lot of enthusiasm last weekend at Hamilton Park for his kickoff event. And again, he laid out his case about not taking donations from developers, from being a progressive voice. But this is my thing about James Solomon. And number one, I get it. You're a progressive guy. You want to be woke, right? I know you just introduced an ordinance in the city council about making sure that there are gender-neutral bathrooms in Jersey City. I mean, of all the things going on in Jersey City, I'm not sure if that's the most important thing we should be worried about, but whatever, fine. I know he also wants to acquiesce to the alphabet army. But the point is, though, folks, that, there are a lot of things that James Solomon tries to sort of bring to attention because of national politics. And, at a local level, again, folks, all politics is local. That's what you should be focusing in on. Now, whether or not that resonates with the downtown crowd remains to be seen. But secondly, what sort of concerns me is if you looked at his kickoff rally, he had some of those local progressive activists, such as Hector Oseguera and other, quote, progressives, right, who I like to call regressives, who, again, folks, have been in the news cycle. They've been sometimes belligerent. They've been outspoken. They've just been downright nasty on social media to people who dare to oppose them or call them out. I'm not sure if these are the type of people that Councilman Solomon should be surrounding himself with, but hey, come hell or high water, sink or swim, that's where James Solomon, figuratively, that's the hill he's going to die on when it comes to this election. So we'll see what happens, but again, it's probably going to be the most interesting council race in Jersey City come this November. Let's keep it in Jersey City, and apparently a council candidate in Ward D who will be challenging Yusuf Saleh will be having a fundraiser called Drag Me to the Polls. Now, shout out to John Hyannis with the Hudson County View for his report on this story. Now, council hopeful Danielle Freer will be hosting a drag brunch fundraiser later this month, aptly titled Drag Me to the Polls. Now, she went on to say, quote, powered by people ready to see authentic representation in the Heights, our event is an ode to the historic efforts made by the fierce LGBTQIA+, Jesus Christ, folks, I can't even keep up with this. It seems like there's like a new consonant added every week to this. It's ridiculous. But anyway, to the community who have fought to be seen and heard. Now, the LGBTQIA+, Christ, community is near and dear to me. I am a proud ally and friend to amazing humans who have brightened my life with love, joy, and wisdom. Now, according to Freer in a statement this week. She also wanted to say, quote, we must continue to support our friends and family members by being a vocal advocate and educating ourselves on the history of the gay liberation movement. Now, this includes the acknowledgement of the erasure of Black, Brown, Indigenous, Two-Spirit, and trans communities who to this day face systemic violence and discrimination. What Two-Spirit means, folks, I have no idea. Jesus Christ. Let's promote a just and equitable city where all residents can thrive. Now, the event will feature Jersey City and New York City drag queens and kings featuring Kia Carr, Salayani, Mystery with an E at the end, Melkiki, and Betty UBTTM. Now, Drag Me to the Polls will be hosted at the 512 Quantum Sound Rooftop, which is located at 512 Patterson Plank Road in sort of the border of Union City and the Jersey City Heights, coming up on Saturday, June the 26th from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. As I mentioned before, Freer is challenging incumbent Yusuf Saleh, who was appointed to the city council in April of last year, shortly after the death of the late, great Michael Youn, and won a November special election in quite the definitive fashion. Well, folks, listen, I've reached out to Danielle to come on the podcast and as well as other media programs to talk about her candidacy. And I get it, folks. This is cute and all. And, again, she wants to acquiesce to the Alphabet Army, who, again, seems to be adding a new consonant to the movement in terms of the symbol every single week. But I don't know, folks. This just, I don't think it's something that, quite frankly, in Ward D, especially in the Heights, is probably the most pressing issue. Yes, I get it, folks. Listen, I like to be humane, and I certainly don't like to see anybody marginalized or victimized. But in the grand scheme of things, in terms of what's going on in the Jersey City Heights, I'm not sure if Danielle's priorities are in the right place. Yeah, it's great to pander and cater to the woke crowd, and you want to seem so hip and cool, and, again, making sure that the Alphabet Army is included in all your activities. Again, I don't know. I don't know where Danielle's orientation is. I don't really care. I don't know if there's a vested interest in this by her to sort of cater to this crowd, but it remains to be seen whether or not, number one, it gets a turnout coming up on June the 26th, but more importantly, if this is something that will really resonate with residents in the Heights, parking, development, quality of life, and just crime overall. These are the things that really matter in the Jersey City Heights because it's issues that matter to residents. We'll find out exactly if these sort of talking points by Danielle Freer do at least touch a nerve with residents in Ward D coming up this November. And that's our show for this week. Folks, before we close, I just want to once again wish a very happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. I'm very privileged and very, very fortunate to have my dad still with me and my uncle, who are two, I would argue, the two best men I've ever met, men of character, dignity, and quite the sense of humor. Being a sports fan that I am, and of course, if you see me on social media, you know what I'm talking about. I got that fandom from my father and from my uncle, who, whether it's watching our New York Yankees, whether it's watching the NFL, whether it's watching the NBA playoffs, even the NHL, which I kind of drag my dad and my uncle to watch once in a while, or even soccer, right? It's June, it's the Copa America, it's the Euro Cup. You know what? There's never a dull moment with them. We can watch games and just talk, and their commentary is priceless. You want to hear about comical play-by-play? That's my father and my dad. So I'm really fortunate to have them. And for all of you out there, again, fortunate to have your dads as well, spend time with them, enjoy the time, and make something fun out of it this weekend, folks. And once again, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. And that's our show for this week. Once again, to check out the leader in independent media right here in Hudson County, the Hudson Media Group, check out their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com and www.livestream.com/HMGTV. Make sure you like the Hudson Media Group on Facebook. Also follow them on Instagram and Twitter, and also check them out on YouTube. Of course, check out the 5-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/talkingthehudson. Always remember, folks, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always talking politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.